There are wounds that leave no blood, no bruises, no visible scars on the skin. And yet, they hurt for a lifetime. You smile, but you don't really feel joy. You're tired, but you don't know why you're exhausted. Someone asks, "Are you okay?" And you're not sure how to answer. For 30 days, I sat with my shadow. Not metaphorically, but literally. I journaled, meditated, watched my reactions, and faced memories I'd buried long ago. What I'm about to share isn't theory. It's what I discovered, day by day, inside myself. This video is for those wounds. The ones no one can see, but you feel them. Deeply, quietly, constantly. Carl Jung once said, "The shadow begins to form when we're forced to hide our true selves. To survive, what we suppress doesn't vanish. It returns from the unconscious, shaping our lives silently." Not all trauma comes from chaos. Sometimes it comes from absence, from a gaze that never met ours, from a hug that never happened. You grew up without anyone teaching you how to name your feelings, so you stayed silent and began to believe that emotions were something to hide. Around day 7, I noticed how uncomfortable I was just sitting still with sadness. It wasn't loud, it was hollow, but it was mine. You learned to be strong, only because no one showed up when you were weak. You became the one who listens to everyone, but forgot how to listen to yourself. In Jung's words, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. When we carry the projections of others, we lose connection to who we truly are. That disconnection forms the shadow. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The most powerful wounds are the ones buried deep. We think we've forgotten them, but they shape everything. How we love, how we fear, how we leave. On day 14, I snapped at someone I cared about, not because of them, but because a part of me was terrified of being seen. That was my shadow reacting. That moment made me realize the shadow isn't some abstract force. It lives in how I defend, how I retreat, how I protect old pain. The shadow holds the parts of us we learn to reject, the sadness, the anger, the longing to be seen. And yet, the shadow never disappears. It reacts when someone gets too close. It repeats patterns with people who hurt us. It withdraws just when things start to feel good. According to Jung's depth psychology, the shadow is not evil. It is simply hidden. If unacknowledged, it controls us. If seen with compassion, it becomes part of our wholeness. Maybe you don't cry, but you feel empty at night. You're not angry, but nothing excites you anymore. You exist, but you don't feel alive. This is soul exhaustion, not because you're weak, but because you've been strong for too long. On your own, no one sees the collapse, because you've mastered the art of rebuilding yourself. Quietly, midway through this journey, I realized that numbness is often the mask of grief, a kind of grief you didn't know you were carrying. Carl Jung's insight reminds us, suppressed shadow doesn't always explode. Sometimes, it numbs. We lose emotional connection with ourselves. We survive, but we stop living. Healing doesn't begin with blame, it begins with gentleness. You don't need others to validate your pain, but you do need to acknowledge it for yourself. On day 24, I didn't try to fix anything. I just sat by the window and let myself cry. Without knowing why, that was the softest moment of the 30 days. When you allow yourself to feel, to be unclear, to be soft, that's when the journey home truly begins. Not to become better, but to become whole. Carl Jung once described individuation as the process of becoming whole, of integrating the shadow into conscious life, not perfection, but inner union. If you see yourself in these words, I just want you to know, you are not alone. You don't have to prove your wounds. If you feel them, they are real, and that is enough. After 30 days with my shadow, I didn't become perfect, but I became honest. And that honesty feels more alive than any illusion of strength I used to wear. If you ever feel ready, try spending a day with your shadow, even just one. You might be surprised what rises. If this video touched something inside you, leave a dove emoji, a small sign that you are no longer silent. I'll see you again, somewhere along this healing journey. And this time, you don't have to walk it alone. Carl Jung's insight reminds us, healing doesn't come from avoiding pain, but from walking through it with awareness. That's the way home to your true self.